So, welcome everyone. Nice to see you all. Ma'am,
Yes, dear.
over to you.
Right. Well, hello everyone. Glad to see you all again. I must say I congratulate everybody on the lovely little boys you all did. It felt to me as if you'd really taken on board the technique I'm trying to explain to you and had really made a good try at doing it. And two of you, absolutely to my delight, had actually found their own little people to draw, which was also very good. So let's turn to this. So that's a pat on the back for everybody. Now let's see if we can expand what you've learned and move on to the next picture. Now this looks to be quite a complicated picture of not quite a queue, but a group of people actually waiting for the boat. And it looks extraordinarily complicated to draw. So let me see if I can break it down a little for you. If you look at these two people here, they are fairly central to the picture. They're quite important in the picture. If you start here to do your drawing, ignoring everything else, get these two in the right place, more or less the right shape. Now they're lovely because they've got big fat tummies. And so often when you see people in a crowd, everybody's the same svelte shape, and that's not the way the world is. So it's quite nice to see these two big tummies and nice fat arms on the people. So you get these two people right. Now next to her is a sort of half person, which is very difficult to see and even more difficult to describe. So I've just left her out. You don't have to put her in. If when you get your picture painted, you feel you want to put her in, that's fine. But just leave her out for the time being. So you move on from this couple to this couple. Now he's the tallest man in the picture. They're practically level, and he's a good head taller than everybody else. One of these tall Swedes, I think. Now, if you look carefully, you'll see she's got a bag on her back, and his bag is just slightly above her bag. So that places them in contact together. So the next thing you do, having drawn these two, is to move on and draw this blokey here. Now, when I was doing the photo, I was actually standing on a lower platform. You can see the darkness here at the end of the jetty. Well, there was a lower one, and I was standing on that, which is why the horizon is so high, because I was looking up. So I can actually see the soles of that foot. Just be careful about getting these feet in the right place. When you've got him, you can move to her because she's slightly behind him. You've lost an arm and you've lost part of a leg there. So that's the next thing to do. Now, if you move here, this is a very awkward set of arms and legs to put into the picture. She's actually holding a child who's leaning over a lump of stone, rock, doing probably fishing or something. I don't know what he's doing. But her legs don't seem to be in the right place. Maybe there's somebody else around there. It's very difficult to see what's going on. So I just left her out. It's such a difficult thing to paint. We can put something else in there to join her to this person here. So the next one to get in is this one. So you have to place her, if it is a her, I think it's a her. Look at the distance between the feet and assess that it's about the same distance as that curve left. So if you drew a line there, you'd have a nice isosceles triangle. Okay, so that's a good point of contact. And you get this person set in. That sets the outer limit of your picture. So we've got this long, these two, and these two. Now the next safe group to draw is this little set of four here. There's this person. I think it's a gentleman, but I'm not.
Ma'am, you got muted again. Could you unmute yourself?
Okay.
Yes. I'm
Right.
not sure what happened there.
How much have people lost?
You were talking about the gentleman at the end of the bit of rock.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry, we had a slight glitch. This lady or gentleman, I'm not sure which, and these three children. That passage of heads there is rather charming. And he makes a nice upright at the end. So if you put him in, his head is about the same level as that man's head. So that's a good starting point. You can't actually see his legs. There's too much going on around here. So you get his head and shoulders in. This little boy, who does have at least 1 foot and an arm. And then there's this lady sat on the bottom stone of the stones, sitting with bent legs. And next to her, the little girl. So that's another group to get in. Now, when you've done that, I've ignored this half of the picture, by the by. When you've done that, you'll find you've got 4 distinct groups. You've got this group of 4, this group of 2, this group of 2, and this person by themselves. Looking between this gentleman and this group, he's carrying a strange parcel, which I don't understand, so I've ignored it. There's this lady here, sat with her back to us. She's sitting on the rock, looking out to sea. And she makes quite a nice shape. You've got her shoulders and her head and her shoulders joining this group and this group. And down here, you've got her behind with a nice piece of light on the top of the rock. So she's a rather nice shape. And this person here also gives you another fall of heads, like this fall of heads, which makes for an attractive composition. And finally, over here, what I've done is to take that lady and put her over here twice. So here is my drawing. I hope you can see. This is the first group with the 2 extra people. This is the second group of the 2 fat people. This is the next group of the tall boy and his girlfriend. Then we have 2 people I've made up, good heavens, sitting on the other side of the rock. So all we can see is shoulders and a head. And since they're looking out to sea, there's no faces to do. Then there's this fella here, and sitting on the rock, if you look at the photograph, there's another fella who's actually sitting down and his legs are coming out over the rock, and that makes a nice join there. So these 2 legs belong to this bloke, and he's half hidden by this fella, and these 2 fill in the gap in between. So we've got a nice joined up picture, but the groups are sensible. I think that makes quite a nice setup. I've gone through that carefully because I have considerable trouble drawing, and if I have a road map, I find it easier. So if I explained my road map to you, I thought those of you who struggle might also find it easier. Okay, now I'm going to continue with what we did last week, which was to paint in the shadow. And I'm going to do it across the whole of this group. Now, I'm going to take my time to do it. You don't want to hurry this. You want to get in enough of your shadows in the right places so that when you put the body color on, the picture reads as it should, and you get your shadows in the right place. It just makes it easier. Right, okay, so I've got my brush. This is a size 10. And it's still got quite a nice point, so I can do little bits of shadow, and using the body I can do bigger bits of shadow. I've got my blue here. And I need it a lot thinner than it is. There we are. Let's just have a look and see what colour that is. It's a bit strong. Right, so I'm going to rinse my brush, take the water out of the brush. There's plenty of water in the palette. Now, if you look here, you'll see how pale the colour is. And you can be as pale as that to begin with. It's quite easy. Now I'm left-handed, so I'm going to start here and work that way. If you're right-handed, you'll probably want to start there and work that way. It isn't wrong, it's just different. Okay, let's look and see what we can do here. We look at the little boy. His face is in shadow under his cap, and it goes down the front of his body. If you look at the shadows, such as there are, the sun appears to be over here, so it's catching the back of people. We come down here, this arm is in shadow, and there's a shadow around the back of his arm there. Down here. Seems to be a shadow across the back of his jacket. And his legs, all that you can see of them, are also in shadow. This area down here is in shadow. This area all down here is in shadow. This is the little girl's leg. That part of the rock is in shadow. There. Differentiate it out with the other colours. If we travel up this lady, she's in shadow at the front here. And it goes under her neck and is on her face. There's a little touch of shadow in the hat. And it goes over her shoulder. Down here. This little girl's arm is in shadow. And the bit underneath her arm there is in shadow. This side of her knee is in shadow. This leg seems to be a shadow down here. Not quite sure what that is, but this leg has got a shadow here. And this part of this leg is in shadow. And so is that shoe. Right. Now what else has she got? Her face is in shadow. And that side of her hair. It seems to come diagonally across her like that. The inside of this arm. The underside of this arm. Now this lady is dark, so we can just put her in shadow. Sitting on the rock. Which is all dark here. And if we look at her head, that part is in shadow and it comes across her shoulder there. Right, okay. See how if you just track the shadows, you can tip along quite easily. Now, this fella's hat has got a little shadow on that side there. His face, which is him, is in shadow, except for the side of his head. His neck is in shadow. There's a touch of light on his shoulders, so come below that, going down to the little boy's hat. He's in shadow. Now, if we come down here, the whole of his face, sorry, his shirt rather, is in shadow. And that is helping to define the little boy. He'll come a bit clearer later on, but that's helping to define the little boy. It comes around here, so that lady's hat begins to show up nicely now. Over here, this part of him is in shadow. This shoulder here is in the light. So, and that arm is in shadow. Now that arm, the shadow thereof, helps to define this lady. And the, I've just gone over a bit there. I've just been a bit excessive. So if I rinse my brush, I take off the excess moisture of the brush and just go back and wipe it down. And then blot it with a rag. Lo and behold, my indiscretion has been cleared up, which is nice. Right, put some more paint on and continue with our adventure. Let's get on with him. Let's see, where's that lady's hat? Let's see. Right, okay. So he comes round there, like that. And the inside of his arm is in shadow. There. Right. This fella has got shadow on this side and on there and down there and on his arm about there. Right, so that's made a start. Now, this lady won't be in shadow from these people here because they're well forwarded. Let's get them sorted out with the shadow now. Let's look at his hat. His peak is practically in shadow for some reason, most unusual. And the leading edge of his hat around his head. His face underneath is also in shadow, so we can take that down there. The back of his head is in the light. Shadow comes down here and across his tummy. Well across his tummy. He's well in shadow here. Just that shoulder is capturing the light because his good lady is sheltering him from the sun where she's standing. So the whole of him is in shadow. Just doing one person at a time. And when you come here, be careful. The back of his legs is catching the light. The front of his legs is in shadow. So do be careful to leave as much as you can. When you come down here, the light is catching his foot. And then we get his shoe in the shadow and a bit underneath the shoe there. Now here's his trousers again. This leg we can barely see because of her white bag. So we pull this leg down and again the side of the foot is showing a bit of sunlight. And we put it just like that. Now if you feel, for instance, that the shadow is a bit abrupt, you can do what I did with the other thing. Rinse your brush, take out all the water. Just run your brush along that edge. It's a dry brush, so it won't affect the thing, and it just sort of blends the shadow off a little bit. That's all right. Now, let's continue. Her bag here is in shadow. Right down to there. All the way along here. There's a little bit of a shadow there, and then you've got that kind of shadow. So all of her bag is in shadow. Her trousers are in shadow. Two of the four handles are in shadow, so we can do them that side. We want to try and leave the handles there, the back of the hand. If we come up here, all of her tummy is in shadow. It goes under her hat there. Her face is in shadow. His arm is in shadow mostly. Look across the elbow. Her hat is in shadow there. There. And comes round there. That'll do. And we are underneath. Her back is in light. She catches a bit of shadow here, and the side of her bag is in shadow. But her backside is not in shadow. It's catching the light, so you know, have to think about these things. The front of this leg is in shadow. When we get down here, if that's her foot down there, that's in shadow too. Okay. Now let's transfer ourselves to the fella. Side of this head. Most of his face. He's actually got a mask on, so I'm going to leave that off, I think. And we get a diagonal shadow here, because he's so tall, he's well exposed to the light. Catches his shoulder a very little bit there, but all of this shoulder and the upper arm are in shadow. And just round that sliver of light, we've got his bag, which is also largely in shadow. There. Now this arm is catching the light on the top as it swings across his body. Well, underneath that, we've got more shadow. And again, when you come to his legs, the front of his legs, that's his side, isn't it? The side of his legs has caught the light. So take your shadow down the dark side of the leg. Comes across the shoe at the bottom there. We come here, that diagonal shadow swings across him there, catches you a bit there. And this side. It's quite slender actually. Like all those things you find out when you're drawing people. I think we can colour in his trousers there. The trousers are catching the light here, but over here, And I'm putting it in jagged because his pants are beautifully creased. Very little on this side actually. So we can put it across like that. This leg, again, like the other leg, is catching the light on the top. So if we get the shadows right, he's got white socks and the sole of his foot is in shadow. There's a line across there, right. I think that's about right there. I think that will do. Let's turn our attention to her.
9 minutes.
Oh God, I shot out the skin
Sorry.
there. I'm concentrating so much. Now again, she's wearing a mask. I just think I'll take it off. I suppose it makes it the COVID picture, but now all of that side of her. Oh, sorry, I've missed his shadow there, haven't I? And there's a shadow there. Right, now all of this side of her is in shadow, and her shadows help to define his arm. All of her front is in shadow until we get to this side of her shirt. So we can just pull the shadow down. The pants are in shadow on this side, and that leg that's disappearing behind his is largely in shadow. Again, we can paint the trousers in. Here they are. Got a mishmash of shadows on them. There. This leg is in shadow here. And we can paint her boot dark because, well, it's dark anyway. Now again, we have shadow down the arm. Once you get your eye in and you know which direction the light is coming from, it is surprisingly easy just to walk along from one person to the other, putting them in. Now these people here that I made up will have the same sort of lighting as I've got there. So they're top, not quite the top of their head, and it'll come down and come over that shoulder there, maybe down there a bit. And this one the same. Barely a person, that one. This fella will be all in shadow. This man here. The only place he's catching the light is on his knee of his second leg. So all these are dark areas. All this is dark. That knee catches the light, but the front of the leg is in shadow, as is his foot. Now this fella is in shadow, that is in shadow. Again, the back of his leg is catching the light. And here, such nice fat legs. The shadow wanders around a bit there, which is rather nice. There's a patch of light trousers. This is dark, so you might as well put it in as dark. A shadow all the way down here. A bit stripy there, all the way down here. Under that arm, it actually goes across and puts most of this arm in shadow too. Light is catching the top of his shoulder. We've got shadow down there on his head, which helps to define. And there's a bit of shadow under his arm there, and this arm used to be in shadow there. Now, if you've got time, you can put in the shadows on the rock. It's leaving places of light because it's some kind of striated rock, so you can have fun with that while you're doing things. Here we have more of the more here. Can leave a slither of light at the top because that helps. She is sitting on a slither of light, which is nice. It's not as dark as she should be, but I can do that. She's sitting there. And then there's a shadow here, as these people are sitting on the rock. I've got a few more splashes there. And if we go this far, we can put their shadows in, which want a lot. Just very thin wisps of shadows. There we are. And that's it. Lesson complete. Now that took me nearly half an hour. So like I said, take your time. And when we go back to it next week, we'll be starting to put the colour in. It's just a way of doing something that's very complicated in an easy way. You know, eat the elephant in small bites. Good luck. I hope you do as well as you did with the little fellas. And of course, if you have your own cue to paint instead of this one, that will be fine. Don't attempt to do both unless you've got acres of time.